I'm Curt Dupriez, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the third and final installment of our 10,000 kilometre experience with the Honda CR-V e-HEV RS that I've nicknamed Fred. In our first video, we covered off what is Fred and why is it part of our long-term fleet. In our second video, we kicked off our final thoughts after putting 10,000 clicks under Fred's tyres. We knocked off what we've done with Fred over the last 6 months and covered off some of our 5 hits and 5 misses of the long-term hybrid CR-V experience. To quickly recap, I covered off how I liked the vibe of the car, but I didn't like the clumsy startup. We deep dived the interior and the boot space, and I gave you my hot take that I think that the Honda CR-V is better served as a 5-seater than a 7. So far, 2 hits and 2 misses for Fred. But this time around, we're going to look into the hybrid system, I'm going to talk about fuel economy and the on-road experience. We're also going to discuss reliability after 6 months and ownership credentials, and conclude our 5 hits and our 5 misses. And as a final verdict, we'll decide whether or not we'd be happy to drive the CR-V off into the sunset or be relieved to hand it back to Honda Australia. So let's dive in one last time, starting under the bonnet. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Hit number 3 is that CR-V is finally available as a hybrid, and it's a pretty complex hybrid at that. Now, I did attempt a technical deep dive on the e-HEV system, and I do mean attempted, on our long-term review, which you will find on our website. But the short of it is this: it fits a 2-litre naturally aspirated engine backed by an eCVT or continuously variable transmission. So far so simple, but it's about to get a little bit crazy. Now, the engine can direct drive the front wheels on a highway, much like it does in Mitsubishi's Outlander plug-in hybrid. But unlike its Mitsubishi rival, it can also direct drive the front wheels around town with something akin to a reduction drive. And then other times it disconnects drive altogether and just charges the battery like a generator. So it's not really a simple CVT arrangement at all. Now, quite unusually, the e-HEV system gets 2 electric motors, but it's only driven at the front wheels. Weird, right? Well, according to Honda, one of those electric motors drives the front wheels with or without the combination of internal combustion, while the other one essentially also acts as a generator for the battery. So a motor charges the battery, which powers a motor, which charges the battery, which powers the motor, that charges the battery. It seems like Honda has inadvertently invented perpetual motion, and in doing so, has probably cured the world's energy problems. Well, perhaps not, but the upshot of this is that urban fuel consumption is quoted to be 4.9 litres per 100. Now that's less than half of the urban consumptions of any of the other CR-Vs in the lineup, which all use a 1.5 litre turbocharged engine, and all come with advertised figures in the 9s. So that's really within striking distance of the fuel economy offered by Toyota's RAV4 hybrid. And that's where the CR-V wants to be, and frankly, needs to be. However, there is one but, and to sort that out, we'll have to take it for a drive. Miss number 3 is that we've had plenty of time to test the hybrid system's real-world consumption, and it's not as good as Honda claims. And to make it solid science, we compared it against the VTI L7 CR-V. That's right, the petrol version in a 7-seater. Now, before you yell unfair fight comparing a 5-seat to a 7-seat, the form guide suggests that the 7-seat CR-V clocks in at 1.7 tonnes. Meanwhile, the hybrid Fred is 71 kilograms heavier. For accuracy, we bring both cars at the same Bowser and then sent them 2 up around exactly the same 50-kilometre urban loop. We then refilled the tanks to 2 clicks and then banked the data. Then we repeat the exercise across a 50-kilometre highway loop. Same loop, same conditions, with both cars within eyeshot of each other. Then we refilled both cars on the same pump to get our extra urban figure. Result, around town the petrol CR-V returned 9.3 litres, or pretty much bang on its claim. Meanwhile, the hybrid returned a fuel figure around town of 5.6 litres, or not nearly that close to its 4.9 claim. On the highway, the petrol version returned a 7.1, which is about a litre thirstier than its claim. And the hybrid, well, it returned 6.2 litres on the highway, which is a little bit thirstier than its 5.8 litre claim. Combined, the petrol returned 8.2 litres per 100 kilometres, while the hybrid returned a fuel figure of 5.9 combined. Sure, you could probably get better fuel economy figures, and according to some of the comments from viewers, you already have. But the result is that the hybrid system does bring fuel economy dividends. But you have to think that for the technology that Honda is invested in here, that those fuel economy figures aren't really all that rosy. And using the same fuel economy loop, a Toyota RAV4 is a genuine circa 4 litre consumption proposition, and we know because we've tested it time and time again. Hit number 4 though is a CR-V's hybrid is a nice thing to drive. I'd initially reported that the CR-V e-HEV system is smoother and quieter than that you'll find in the Toyota RAV4. That the Honda likes to hang on to electric drive a bit longer, and the switchover point between electric and internal combustion is quite a bit smoother. But then, not that long ago, a RAV4 Cruiser 2-wheel drive hybrid slipped through the Chasing Cars garage for a direct comparison, and now I'm not sure the gap is quite so wide. And you can check out my comparison between Fred and that Cruiser in my written long-term report. In short, this powertrain is very good, and that 335 Newton meters of electric mumbo is really nice off the line. But importantly, it's a really nice powertrain to live with under normal balanced driving conditions. It's great around town, and it's great on the open road. Frankly, I've just left it in its default normal drive mode pretty much the entire time for the last 6 months, as a bit of a set and forget. And it's pretty toe-in flexible enough in that mode to not ever have to dive for the sport mode. When you do engage sport, there is a little bit of extra fanfare, so you get extra muscle, you get some extra soundtrack piped through the stereo system, and the CVT will fake gear changes. That little trick has fooled at least one commenter on a past CR-V video. You know who you are. When the engine's 135 kilowatts weighs in with the electric motor to produce a total system output of 153 kilowatts, Fred will rattle off the 0 to 100 km/h sprint in mid 7 seconds, about 1/10 quicker than a RAV4 hybrid. Fred's really good on the anchors too, pulling up 36.5 metre stop in emergency braking. But miss number 4 for me is that the e-HEV system does bring up some shortcomings. The big one for me is that unlike RAV4 and the new Hyundai Tucson, there is no all-wheel drive option. And then there's towing. At 750 kilos brake, it's just half of the capacity of the 1.5 tonnes of a front-drive petrol CR-V. And perhaps because of some of the electric gubbins that need to be housed under the floor of the boot, it is the only CR-V in the lineup that doesn't fit a spare tyre. No all-wheel drive, limited towing, no spare wheel. You add that with fairly unremarkable fuel economy, and really this is the least suitable CR-V in the lineup for grand touring. Which is a real shame, because for me, hit number 5 is that this car is really nice to drive on the open road. Despite the 19-inch wheels and a ride height that is pleasing to the eye, the ride quality is actually remarkably good. On one hand, it's really compliant, just wafting over humps and undulations. But there's plenty of body control, and it does feel rock solid when you do dial up 110 on the cruise control. Now, I've spent a few thousand kilometres on the open road, and I must say the comfort of this chassis, married with the comfort of the interior, really makes for a great grand tourer. I can really spend all day in this RS without much sense of fatigue. It's just a shame that you really need to opt for an all-wheel drive petrol version if you really want something that's a little bit more flexible for the Australian environment. And miss number 5 for me is that despite how nice this car is to drive, it's really not sporty enough to live up to that RS badge. Don't get me wrong, stick it into a corner and this RS is certainly one of the most confident and competent mid-size SUVs out there. At least those SUVs without any sporting pretensions. But if you've come to the RS expecting a car that will entice you on the twisty country roads on a Sunday morning, you've probably come to the wrong place. Not disappointing though has been reliability. Fred has been absolutely bulletproof over the last 10,000 kilometres in 6 months, needing nothing more than a little bit of wiper fluid and some air in the tyres. It's remained gun barrel tight without a squeak or a rattle, and bar a little bit of sagging on the driver's seats, there's virtually no wear and tear. It's also reasonably cheap to run. The engine only needs 91 octave fuel, servicing is capped, and the intervals are 10,000 kilometres. And on the topic of ownership, the warranty is 5 years of unlimited kilometre coverage. So we've come to the end of the road with Fred and our final verdict on the Honda CR-V e-HEV RS. Hopefully this is the last time I have to say that. And to answer the overarching question of could it stay or should it go, I have decided that for my lifestyle and the way that I use it, I would happily keep this RS spec CR-V. I've gotten used to the silly startup process, and some of the gremlins I could actually easily live with. And I've certainly found nothing close to a deal breaker, particularly for someone like me who's a city dweller. But despite clocking up so many interstate Ks in this RS without incident, it's certainly not my pick for the open road, or for towing, or for getting off the beaten track. All things considered, I do think that the VT-IL LX all-wheel drive version, one rung down, is perhaps a better fit for the all-round Aussie experience. Yes, the turbo engine is a bit thirstier and it is down on torque, but I do think it is a smarter solution for the broader Aussie experience. And it's not far off plenty of those RS-like feel-good vibes. That said, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with Fred, and I do lament saying goodbye. And I can definitely recommend the hybrid RS experience if it suits your lifestyle and you find its 60K drive-away price fairly palatable. So that's it for the long-term experience. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.